progress. Why me? Why children's and family? Okay, so having left school at the tender age of 15, pretty much no qualifications. Maybe the question I have to ask is, did I slip under the radar myself? So that is debatable, but it's a question over the next few years I will be asking myself as I grow in stature with you guys. I personally think I slipped under certain radars. The structure then was a lot different from now, so it did happen then. So having left school at 15, 40 years of work, the most rewarding job that I had was a short period of time at Brewmill and Butlers Hill schools in Hucknall, working for Andrew and Sarah there. I quickly became part of their team and ended up on children's activities, pig club, cow club, chicken club, away days at the zoo, etc. And I found it absolutely fantastic, so soul rewarding. And I will say that that is my best job I've ever had in 40 years of employment. So that is why children's and family, and that is why me. I feel that as a county councillor, I'm a community man and I want to give back. And anything I can do for the great county of Nottinghamshire, children's and family, I'm on board. So moving on to Mike Introna. I would like to thank Mike for his great chairship. I've looked at numerous YouTube postings, and I would like to reiterate Mike's words. Those words were, this should remain apolitical. Our aim is to scrutinise and not politicise. And I would like to take that forward through my chairship, if that's okay. Also, I think that having viewed numerous meetings of all sectors, scrutiny questioning, if we can, if possible, restrict multiple questions from within one question and ask individual questions, get that answered, and then we can have a chance to then ask again, as opposed to getting stifled amongst a question with multiple questions in there. Wherever possible, let's try and have some type of clarity and not to stifle the situation, to stifle the question. So that said, that's me. Finish my little rattle. Yes, so good morning. I'm Councillor Richard Darrington, Chairman of the committee, and I would like to welcome you all to this meeting of the Children's and Family Select Committee. That is being broadcast live and recorded for publication. Sorry if I'm nervous, by the way, this is my first ever church. If we can go to item number 1, Chair and Vice Chair appointments. To note the appointment at full council on the 22nd of May 2025 of myself, Richard Darrington, as Chairman, and of Christopher Adegoke as Vice Chairman of the Children's and Family Select Committee for 2025-26 municipal year. Item number 2, committee membership. To note that the membership of the committee for 2025-26 municipal year is as follows. Councillors Teresa Cullen, John Goold, Johno, Richard Lowe, Andy McCormack, Harry Om, Joseph Rich, Mrs. Sue Saddington and Jody Stoll. Education representatives are Nigel Frith, Church of England, and James McGeachie, Catholic Church. So moving on to number 3.
Chairman, if I could, I'm substituting Councillor Lee.
We'll get to that point in a minute, Councillor.
Yeah. Okay, so item number 3. Can I ask the committee to approve the meeting minutes of the last meeting, please? And if we have a show of hands, if everybody approves.
Can I just put your hand up if you was here?
We're just taking them as read, really, unless anyone's got some major issues. What we've been doing in previous committees, we just take them as read. So,
okay. Yeah, absolutely. Item number 4, apologies for absence. Can I ask James if we have any apologies for absence?
Okay, Chairman. So we have apologies from Councillor Johno, as Councillor Gerlin has said, and he is substituting today for Councillor Lee. We also have apologies from Nigel Frith. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely, thank you. So if we can have our declarations of interest, item number 5. If any,
Sorry, jumping in again, Chairman. We've got 3 councillors' names in, and they've not been mentioned in the apologies, or have they apologised?
Yeah, Councillor John Gould.
As she
Sent
sent
out
out.
for the police.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
yeah, Jan's emailed you this morning, she said.
So there's Jan, Hannah, John, Richard Lowe, and McCormack.
Hannah is in the cabinet meeting.
Yeah, and there's a
She
cabinet
might not.
meeting. She's joining us later, I believe. I don't know whether she notified you of that. Okay, declarations of interest. If any councillor or officer has an interest in any matter on the agenda, you should declare it now. Please raise your hands now if you have an interest to declare. Item number 6, introduction to Children and Family Select Committee work programming. I advise the meeting that this item is to introduce members to the role of Children's and Family Select Committee and to assist members with developing a committee's work programme for 2025-26. Officers will today make a presentation to the meeting, after which members will have the opportunity to suggest items for inclusion in the work programme. And we're going to move on. So can I ask Cullen, Executive Director of Children's and Family, to make a presentation, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. So I will make a presentation to committee, recognising that many of you are new to this committee in this area. One of the things I would say is that after 41 years of working in children's services, I'm still trying to get to understand it. Yeah, so having been elected members at the County Council for only a few weeks, yeah, it's understandable if this area is an area of some mystery, yeah, complexity, yeah, and of course sensitivity. Yeah, so recognise that. We support children and families in Nottinghamshire in a particular approach, with children and families being right at the centre. Yeah, we use this image to demonstrate kind of the mighty oak, yeah, of Nottinghamshire that speaks to our heritage and our history, yeah, but also talks at the bottom about growing from strength to strength. Yeah, so Nottinghamshire is a good local authority for children and family services. In the main, there are areas for improvement, yeah, with every local authority, but we've got a great deal of strengths. Our schools, in the main, are high performing. Our children's social care, yeah, is high performing, yeah, and we'll build on those strengths, and we'll hear a bit about that around SEND improvement when we get to that agenda item on the report. Behind our approach is about being fair and respectful, yeah, both to each other, but also to the families and the children that we work with, to listen and learn to our children and families, yeah, to hear their lived experience of our services, or what it's like to be a resident in Nottinghamshire, yeah, or to be a pupil, for instance, at a school, and build strong relationships. Yeah, so this is one of those relationships that we want to strengthen and build on. Yeah, next slide, please. The Director of Children's Services and the lead member for Children's Services, and in Nottinghamshire, the lead member for Children's Services is split into 2. Yeah, so we have Councillor Hannah John, yeah, who leads on education and SEND, and Councillor Nigel, and then Councillor Rory Green, who's the lead member for children's social care and things other than SEND and education. But these are statutory roles that are defined in law. Yeah, so local authorities make a decision as to what cabinet members they might have round the table. Yeah, but they're absolutely required under the Children Act to have a lead member for Children's Services and a director of Children's Services. The duties placed under the Act, some of which are listed there, but they run to 200 statutory duties. But professional responsibility for leadership and strategy, securing provision of services which meets the needs of all children, yeah, including disadvantaged and vulnerable children, work closely with other local partners, responsible for performance, yeah, and that's a key role for you yourself as a select, yeah, committee, yeah, to hold me accountable, and responsible for the performance of your children's services department, and to make sure that there are effective arrangements to put those into place. Right, next slide. Corporate parenting responsibilities. So when I'm asked how many children I have, I have 2 birth children, 903 other children, that I'm the corporate parenting parent for. So 903 children in your care, and you have 903 children in your care, and round about the same number who are described as being care leavers between the ages of 18 and 25. And some of those children and young people have a level of vulnerability that they would not be children and young people that you would think would be best placed to live in the community, without that kind of parental support. And if you think about the support, and I'm thinking about the support that I offer my 34-year-old and my 25-year-old daughters, that responsibility doesn't finish at 25, it doesn't finish at 18, it doesn't finish at 16. And whether that's the bank of mum and dad, or the emotional bank of mum and dad, or somewhere to go at Christmas, those are things that too many of our looked after children don't have that advantage of. And if I know anything after 41 years of being a director, working in children's services, I know that that actually making a difference to children's lives boils down to 2 really quite simple things in this really complex situation. One is offering children somewhere to belong, and the other thing is to offer children someone who believes in them. And if we can achieve that, then we build the environment for children to thrive. If we don't achieve that, then we see children finding somewhere to belong and finding somewhere or someone who might believe in them. And that might not be people that you would choose for your own child. So we see too many of our children who have previously been in care, finding that they belong on the street, or they belong in custody, or they belong in adult mental health institutions. Our job, collectively, is to find them somewhere more meaningful to belong. For some children, that will be a foster placement. For some children, it will be residential care. For some children, they find that when they meet their life partner. For some children, they find that when they join the forces. And we've seen, when I worked with victims and survivors of institutional child sexual abuse in Nottinghamshire in the 60s, 70s and 80s, and I spoke to those that didn't find themselves in custody, didn't find themselves in mental health institutions, and didn't find themselves on the street, and asked them what made a difference. It was finding somewhere to belong. And I'm thinking of one particular gentleman, a guy called Mickey Sumner, who's sadly not with us. Mickey found somewhere to belong when he joined the British Army. The British Army believed in him, they trained him, they developed him. And Mickey became a interesting campaigner and leader on behalf of those victims and survivors in the way that he went about it. But he was spectacularly effective in making sure that his voices and the things that he experienced as a child were learned by the county council and our partners. So as a corporate parent, every single elected member in Nottinghamshire, on 66, are corporate parents, and I would encourage members to understand how many looked after children there are in their divisions. It is the case, Chair, and members, that if you live here in Rushcliffe or live in Mansfield, your outcomes as a child are likely to be very different. So if you live in Mansfield or Ashfield, you're 9 times more likely to become looked after than you are if you're a child in Rushcliffe. And those outcomes are repeated in terms of health, education, not in a good way. Some of those children and young people living in our areas with most disadvantage. And there is nothing peculiar that separates those children, other than some of the life opportunities that they have, from family, community, and wider economic well-being. So I'm not going to run through those points because you have this PowerPoint presentation Yeah, but the local government association does some really good work around raising, how to become a effective councillor and corporate parent. And one of the things that local government association will share with you, train you and develop you on, if you take advantage of that, it are those really difficult questions that you ask me or my colleagues within my team that get to the difference or not that we're making to children and young people. Martin, do you want to move on to the next slide? I have three direct reports. So I have a Director for Help, Care and Protection, which is Amanda Collinson, and Amanda is here. This isn't Amanda. Amanda is my next colleague. So Amanda Collinson is the Director for Help, Care and Protection, and Amanda's responsible for the things that are listed there. I have a Director for Education, Learning and Inclusion, which is Peter McCormack, who is the colleague to my left, immediate left. And then to the left of Amanda, we have Rachel Miller, who's the Director for Commissioning and Resources. And between the three of those people, and myself, we spend or invest, and I would try and encourage you to understand better the investment that we make in our children of about £200 million a year. And some of those investments are maybe not as great value for money, because some of the children that we spend the very highest levels of money have some of the poorest outcomes. So there is I would suspect that as a committee, you will want to explore why that is at some point in the future. Martin, could you move next slide on, please? Responsibilities. There's just some data there. 169,000 children who are under the age of 18. About 130,000 of those are school age. 16,000 have got special educational needs. And about 5,500 of those with special educational needs have an education, health and care plan. So all children with a special educational need don't necessarily have an education, health and care plan. And we can, again, we'll explore that in the next agenda item. There are 3,700 children who are children in need. That means that children, unless we were working with them, their outcomes would be poorer. And we have 902, I think I said 903. So that means that since Friday, a child has left care, hopefully for all the right reasons. Since I last looked, I've got 902 looked after children. 572 of those children are also subject of a child protection plan. The workforce, in total, is nudging up to 8,000 when you include our maintained schools. 7,500 employees in total. So you're for a very large workforce, spending an awful lot of money for actually a relatively few number of children. Should we move on, Martin? So there's my structure. It's a different way of showing it. I look a bit like Jack Nicholson in The Shining in my photograph. That's not one of my favourites, I say. So apologies for that. Let's move on, Martin, quickly. Thank you. Current performance and key data. I'll run through these very quickly, but there is a significant amount of data that you will have available to you as a select committee. Some of that data, I think you won't dwell on because you will be satisfied that we're making a difference and impacting. Some you'll want to come back and understand better. But that's one of the great purposes of a select committee. In doing that. But what I would say I won't go through those in each data, but what I would say is in Nottinghamshire, one of the things that we suffer from is our data looks okay. But that belies the fact that when you go into a district level, that data can look really quite bad. So that point around, we have no more looked after children, in fact, slightly less looked after children than many other local authorities like us. But that belies the fact that if you come from Mansfield, as I said earlier, you're 9 times more likely. So Nottinghamshire experiences from central government being a local authority that seems to be doing okay in terms of its data. But that belies outcomes for some of our children, some of our more disadvantaged communities. And that can speak or will speak to some of the things that you might be considering as you go forward around local government reorganisation. So a Nottinghamshire without Rushcliffe would have a very different data profile than a Nottinghamshire with Rushcliffe. That may be a good or bad thing. Yeah, that's something that I think we'll tease out as we go forward. But almost all of our children are in education, employment, or training. Almost all of our children get either their first preference of school, or one of their preferences in school. And you look at data after data and see we're generally doing okay. There are pockets of difficulty. So just to balance out the Rushcliffe thing, you're more likely to be able to get your first preference of school in Mansfield and Nashfield than you would be in Rushcliffe, because Westbridge was a really popular, oversubscribed area for schools. Yeah, and that's a pinch point for us. Yeah, particularly transition from primary to secondary. Mark, do you want to move on? So some of the things that we're doing to improve children's outcomes, because we want to continue to improve. We're judged by Ofsted to be good with outstanding leadership and management. Yeah, but we want it to be outstanding at our next inspection. Yeah, that inspection is likely to happen in 2027 or 2028, because Ofsted have a framework for coming back. When they come back, we want them to leave having judged children's services, so the inspection of local authorities' children's services, to be outstanding. Yeah, currently we're good, and we've been good for the last 3 inspections in 2024, 2019, 2015, and in 2024 we were judged to be outstanding in leadership and management. That suggests to me that we're in an upward trajectory. We haven't plateaued, and it should be very possible and highly desirable that during the period of this administration, everything being equal, that Ofsted judge Nottinghamshire to be outstanding. We're going to get there by developing our family hubs. I want to say there's 17, there's probably 18, someone remind me, 18 family hubs that have evolved out the Sure Start Children's Centre model, which was 0 to 5. So family hubs are now 0 to 19. Because it seems peculiar to us that you would support a family until the child was 5 and then stop supporting them in a family and community setting when they became 6 or 7. Or you could work with a family around their younger child, but not their older child. We're going to develop the Families First Partnership Programme, which is a central government programme. And I suggest that you might want to come back to this select committee to understand what difference that programme is making. We have received a grant this year of an additional £3.2 million to deliver that programme from central government, and the Section 151 finance officer has put a ring fence around that money to develop this programme. It may have been, and I apologise, Chair, I'll check with James after committee, maybe that I should have shared a potential interest in that I'll be leaving Nottinghamshire to join the Department for Education 10 days a month to deliver, as a facilitator to the Families First Partnership Programme across the country. So it's probably, I'll check with James after this meeting. Multidisciplinary approaches where it will have the biggest advantage. So whole family approaches to health and protection, seeing children's needs within the context of parental needs. The vast majority that we look of children who we look after aren't children that would be perceived by kind of Joe Public as being naughty children. They're children who are living with parents with additional needs, whether that's around drugs, alcohol, domestic violence and abuse, or adult mental health. So the vast majority of children come into our care through no fault of their own, but because their parents, for whatever reason, aren't able to meet their needs. And for children in care with needs that doesn't neatly fit our current arrangements, we need to do a bit more work on that. A more holistic support for children with special educational needs and disability in education settings through graduated response. And we'll talk about that, I think, in the next agenda item. But it is something I think that you might want to dig deeper into. Martin? And I've mentioned, so I won't dwell on this, that we have an inspection of local authority children's services, ILACs, which happens within every 5 years. Yeah, so we've had 2024. We think it'll be 27, 28 when we're inspected again, and we're inspected previously in 2015. And then the local area special educational needs and disability inspection, yeah, LESEND, which is a joint inspection of the system. Yeah, so it's the local area, not the local authority, by Ofsted Care and Quality Commission. And immediately before this meeting, yeah, my colleagues and I, including Dame Christine Lenahan and Rosa Warrington, Chief Nurse, were with the CQC and Ofsted inspection team who are in Nottinghamshire this week to monitor our progress against the outcome of that inspection in 2023. Sorry, next slide. Current performance and key data, in terms of public health in particular, you can see, I'm not going to run through those, but we have a number of joint strategic needs assessments that inform our understanding, and the hyperlinks in that slide will take you to any of those, as you may be interested to look at that in more detail. Next slide, Martin. And then working together to improve children's outcomes, we've got the Best Start strategy, the children and young people's mental health approach, a system approach to the integrated care system, Children and Young People's Board, Public Health Commission services for children and young people. So our public health grant funds in excess of £20 million worth of services around Healthy Families Programme. Healthy Families Programme is what many people would describe school nursing and health visiting. So the local authority commissions health visitors and school nurses. It's a community health trust that provide it, but the money comes from public health grant. We also have some stuff around substance use support, integrated wellbeing stuff. Okay, next slide. Healthy Families Programme I've touched upon around what previously had been called health visiting and school nursing. And the work that we are doing is outlined there. This service currently performs above national average for mandated elements and benchmarks positively against statistical and regional neighbours. So again, it's a service that is doing okay. The procurement process is currently underway to source the preferred provider for delivery of the new. So the contract finishes in October 2025. That contract will be let again for a number of years. And we're just in a position, I think we're on the cusp of being able to make an announcement as to who that provider is. And elected members have been involved in that process under the previous administration. Martin, next one. This leads us to things that you might be interested in, and I hope I've been threading through my presentation at what those things might be. So children's social care reform, the Families First Partnership Programme. You'll be investing £3.2 million in that programme. I suspect you'd be interested to understand what progress we're making and where that investment is particularly being made. We have a low sufficiency of care places, particularly difficulties recruiting foster carers. So our 902 children who are looked after, too many of those children are looked after in residential children's homes. They don't need to be in institutional care. They could be in foster care, but we don't have enough foster carers either locally, regionally or nationally, and we're being helped by DFE in trying to address that. But we need to do that, not least of all because it gets better outcomes. Research shows us that children who are brought up in family environments, whether that's their own family, extended family, something we call kinship care, or foster families, are more likely to have better outcomes, health, education, work, employment, than children, sadly, that are in our children's homes. Significant rise in demand for education, health and care plans, which we're going to come on to. We have a high demand for school places, particularly at secondary. So over the last 10 to 15 years, we've built 5,000 new primary school places, because we saw a rise in the birth rate about 10 or 15 years ago. We're now seeing those children that went to primary schools and meant we had to build those 5,000 new places now coming into our secondary provision. And in the main, we have enough secondary position. But to paraphrase, I think it's more wise, they're not always in the right places. Yeah, so we've all the right school places, but not necessarily in the place that we need them. So we've got some small rural schools with significant capacity and space, and then we've got some urban schools that are really, have got some demand. And West Bridgefield is a particular area, but we can, if you get to having a look at that, that will be what you wanting to understand what we've been doing around capital investment and increasing the size of some of our schools. And then that touches on the sustainability of some of our small schools. Peter, our smallest school, probably Compton.
Yeah, or North Clifton.
Yeah, so 2 very small schools with less than 20 pupils. Yeah, each. So that's less than 20 pupils over R1, R2 in years 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6. Yeah. So some of those years, yeah, with 2 or 3 children. Yeah. And as Peter's reminding me, some of our small schools didn't have a new pupil this year. Yeah. So if you project that forward, then we will see some of our schools getting smaller and smaller. Yeah, that's going to be a real challenge. Yeah. There's a couple of bits linked into that. Yeah. For many of us, our lovely, beautiful Nottinghamshire villages, and they want 2 things. One is no more housing, and 2, to keep the school open. And those 2 things can work against each other. Because the communities and the age of people living in those villages, are not bringing children into the world. Yeah, that's probably the best way, Chair, of me explaining it. Martin, is that the last slide?
That's the last slide, yeah.
So, Chair, those are the potential work plan priorities. Yeah, that as your more senior professional officer, I would suggest be a useful focus for this committee to consider.
Thank you, Colin. That was very informative. Can I ask Martin to give us the process for developing the committee's work programme, please?
So what will happen now, we'll have an opportunity now, if anyone's got any suggestions they'd like to make now, we'll make a note of them, but I will email out later on today. I'll attach the presentation. I'll also include the terms of reference for the committee, which is quite straightforward, just for reference. And then if anyone can give me any suggestions, I can't the middle of next week, so everyone's just got a week to think about it. Once we've got the very long list of items, the chair and vice chair would then like to meet with a representative from the Conservative group and a representative from the Independent group to actually look at that long list, go through them, discuss them in more detail, and create a short list of items. When we've got that short list, I'll meet with officers. We'll then work out when throughout the year it will be most beneficial to bring those items to committee and which items might be potential items for a task and finish group.
Super, thank you, Martin. May I ask members for any suggestions for the work programme? Sorry.
I just wanted to ask a question really about the presentation, if I may. Is that right, Chair? Yeah?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because I think it'd be very helpful that Colin just goes through very broadly the fact about school places, because school places isn't a line that goes like that. It's a demographic that goes up and down, and it's very complex. And so it's easy to say, oh, there's no school places, and then all of a sudden you've got more places than you need, and if you're not careful, it can go all wrong. If you could just do it like that, and also explain about the fact that you say that not all the places are in the right schools, but they do tend to be in the right catchment area. So if you could just explain about how that works as well, that would be very helpful for new members because they haven't been involved in it before.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, through yourself. Thank you to Councillor Gillen for the question. I'm going to defer the detail of that to Peter McCormack, Sales Director for Education and Schools. But it is the case. One of the things that we have been guilty of in the past is to publish the data that shows there won't be enough schools in Carlton. And then there is a huge concern there aren't going to be enough schools in Carlton. There won't be enough schools if we don't do anything about it. But of course, we do something about it. And that's about building more school places in Carlton or West Bridgefield or elsewhere. So over the last 5, 6, 7 years, where Peter will helpfully, I think, for them not putting on the place, talk about the level of capital investment and the number of new places that we've built in places like Spencer. Yeah.
I think over the last 4 years, we've built more schools in a 4-year period than any other time, and extended schools as well, to make sure those places are there.
Yeah, and of course, as you can imagine, Chair, it is always better to expand a high-performing, good or outstanding school, and cheaper than building a brand new school just down the road to increase competition. Peter.
Yeah, so school place planning is it's cyclical in terms of the birth rates, and our place planning team, in fact, there was a very good previous select committee item on secondary place planning, which I would refer members to got an interest in this, because it goes into the detail behind our place planning projections and how we work that through in terms of tracking GP live registration birth rates, looking at historical patterns of school attendance and migration in and out of different areas, forecasting future growth through housing developments, a whole range of complex things. We often talk about place planning projections as being a science, an art, not a science, because there's a little bit of, things can fluctuate and move. But we've got very strong history in Nottinghamshire of getting our projections highly accurate. We submit those on an annual basis to the Department for Education, who review that and then approve them through our school capacity assessment, our SCAP return, which then generates our body of work around where have we got potential deficiencies in the future, where have we got over surplus, and we adjust our planning accordingly. We break down people place planning into planning areas, and there's a relation. So planning areas will have a number of schools within them. Sometimes they will cross over different geographical areas, and sometimes there's an interdependency between one planning area and the adjacent one, to make sure that where we're looking at sufficiency, we're looking at it on a slightly larger footprint, to make sure that we're minimising the travel distance for young people who might not be able to get into their most immediate school, but also thinking about capital investment, making sure we get the capital investment in the right place. Cullen referred to that bulge going through secondary. So 2028, we will see the peak of that bulge of birth rates coming through our secondaries. That's meant a lot of our secondary schools have been quite pressured. And we've been through quite a significant programme of expansion of secondaries, both temporary and permanent, where it's needed, where the long-term projections would require permanent places. And again, that links back to that previous select committee presentation that I'm sure Martin will be able to send round, because that will be of interest. Currently, one of the challenges is a decrease in birth rate, and balancing that with what we do with that additional space within those schools. So in some cases, as a local authority working with governing bodies, we're looking at reducing the intakes over a period of time so that schools can staff according to the budget which they will have based on the number of pupils coming in. In others, there's conversations about repurposing some of that additional space, but it might be for SEND provision or other uses. But we have to be very careful to make sure that we're not getting into a position where that birth rate increases, we lose statutory school age capacity. So there's a bit of a balance there for the team. It's a hugely interesting area. I think Wayne Bexton, the Director of Green Growth, Infrastructure and Asset Management, myself will be doing a briefing for elected members shortly around the whole capital programme and the place planning and how that works. So I'm sure that's, again, slides that can be shared with you for more detail. And if it's something the committee's interested in, happy to bring further detail back into this room.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, members' suggestions for the work programme. Councillor Cullen.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, you have to bear in mind that I'm a new councillor just elected, so you might have already done this. I've looked back, I can't see where it is, but very interested in the 98.7% 16 to 17-year-olds who are in education, training or employment. And I think that's a lovely statistic, but it belies a different situation in reality. And I don't know if the work's been done into a deep dive, because I work in this is the field I work in, I've done for more than 40 years. So I know it very well, and I've seen it change over the years. But many of those 16 to 17-year-olds will be attending 1 day a week provision, 2 day a week provision. not attending at all, maintained on school rolls and never attending. And that has an impact on many other things than their education. It has an impact on community safety, because those young people aren't in reality in education, training and employment. So although that statistic looks really, really good, I feel like underneath that statistic, there's something that's not quite as good and something could be done about. So that's my suggestion for the work
Okay,
programme.
super. Thank you very much. Points.
Is that okay? Have you done it Friday?
Thank you.
Like if I may respond to Councillor Cullen, I think that's a really helpful suggestion. Yeah, as I alluded to, I think in my presentation, finding stuff to deep dive in, to see. Yeah, so I could tell you, I know which schools have got the highest level of exclusion, the highest level of fixed term exclusion, the highest levels of permanent exclusion, elective home education. Yeah, and there are also some of those schools that are actually performing on Key Stage 4, for instance, really highly, but at the cost of excluding too many children. Yeah, and Councillor Cullen makes the point, children who are not in school are at risk of poor outcomes, not just educational outcomes, but becoming involved in antisocial behaviour, becoming involved in
Being exploited.
Yeah, so I think if I may suggest, that's a really good suggestion around a deep dive.
Lovely. Thank you, Colin. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Cullen. Okay, any other members want to throw anything in there?
I know I'm not on the committee, but you might want to look at school transport for SEND, because it's a very complex system they've got in place that might be able to be improved by how it's run. So I think maybe looking at that to make it more efficient and maybe save some money by the way it's run, rather than they need it, they need to provide it, but how they provide it, can they be looked at how to change that? I don't know if that's something for this committee or the transport committee, I don't know. But I think it's an important element that we get those children with SEND needs to the schools.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Girling?
Can I have more than one?
As many as you want.
Yeah, we've got all day.
Kinship care. My experience of kinship carers, and I've known a lot over the years and recently, is the level of support for kinship carers is not as it should be. And many more children, I believe, would be able to be looked after more successfully in kinship care arrangements if we had a different look at the way we provide support. So that's where children who can't live with their parents live with other members of their family or extended family. And it's quite often grandparents, but not always, aunties, uncles, But the level of support is really poor, so those relationships break down, and it's quite a difficult job. I think a radical look at that, no, radical's not the word I'm looking at, a detailed look at that might actually really help with the issue of not having enough foster care.
Structure.
Yeah.
Councillor Stoll.
Neurodevelopmental support team waiting times. I've known from the report I've seen of 400 children with 104 weeks waiting time for assessment. That's 2 years, which is a hell of a long time in a child's life to be waiting to be assessed. Whether this is something that that we do consider over the life of this committee, but that seems pretty unacceptable. So I think we look at the reasons for that, how that can be improved, what we can do there. I do know that the trajectory is improving, but even still, it still seems very, very high.
Okay, we'll take that on board.
Pick that up in the next presentation.
Yes.
All of us, in fact, that's what we've just been talking about with the inspectors and the plans. So perhaps after that, if it's still a concern,
Okay.
Think what more might be helpful to bring. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, super. Okay, anybody else wanting, any members wanting it? No, okay, so thank you very much for your contributions. And I reaffirm that Martin and myself will be setting up the meeting.
Yeah.
And,
So I'll be in touch with the presentation and requesting from the opposition groups who'd like to attend that meeting, and we'll work out the time. But if everyone can, once I've emailed out, you can get your suggestions to you by like middle of next week. So everyone's just got over just a week and a bit to think of some ideas.
Yeah, sorry, I'm always back and forward. I'm sorry about that. But was there anything in the last committee's work programme that hadn't been done? Because it might be handy for the members of this committee to know what they were, because there might be some of them that they want to do.
Yeah, I'll send a link round, because all the scrutiny, I don't know if members know, because I've probably not said it before, but all the scrutiny work programmes are on the council's website, and it will show you what we looked at last year. And on the work programmes, there are a list of items that were either agreed to be added to consider for addition for this year, or were just waiting to be scheduled. So there are outstanding items on there that members might want to look at and see if that's something they want to take forward. And we will be bringing those into the conversation anyway. But I will send a link round to the work programme from last year, just so members can have a look at that.
Thank you.
assuming that is the work. That's part of the programme, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Super. Lovely. Okay, let's move on to item number 7. Progress in improving the experiences and outcomes for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities. If we can have an update, please. Yes, yeah. May I ask Colin to introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. And that's almost the seamless segue from the comment we just had from Councillor Coullin. So this is a bit of the work programme from the previous select committee that's carried through to this select committee, and it's so important for elected members that they discuss this at every single meeting. So you get a progress report, and we're joined for this report, which is the progress of the local area system, not the local authority. Of course, the local authority is a significant part, but also with health. We've got us awarding them from there, and we needed to improve so much that we appointed a independent chair that would, from outside of Nottinghamshire, that would offer us some level of robust challenge, as well as support, but robust challenge around whether we're improving well, and that is Dame Christine Lenahan. And Dame Christine has never worked in Nottinghamshire, I don't think, but has worked both nationally and internationally in this area. She's also, since we appointed her as the independent chair, been appointed by the Department for Education as their, I'm trying to avoid czar, that's not the phrase, but national advisor on special education needs and disability. And members will know that this is a particular area of concern for central and local government, where we've got local government who are currently £6 billion in deficit in terms of support to children with special educational needs, and the projection by national finance is that will raise to £22 billion in debt or in deficit by 2030. But this report isn't about that. This report is about what progress we're making against our areas of priority action. And having 2 of those areas of priority action was the reason that we found ourselves to be subject to Ofsted outcome 2.5 years ago that said that we were systemically failing, and they had serious concerns about the system. So if I may, I'll hand over to Rosa and Dame Christine. We're grateful to have joined us today and left home at 4:30 this morning for a train to be here with you to contribute towards discussion. The detail covered by Peter, who leads in this area on behalf of the partnership. But Rosa, if I may.
And I didn't get up at 4:30. I would look a lot worse than this. Trust me, I'm not a morning person. So as Colin talked about, those 2 priority actions fell in 2 main areas. One was a focus around education, health and care plans and how we assess and plan for and understand the need of our children and young people. And the other, very much to your point, talked about the waiting times our children and young people have for accessing health service. And the two main ones, although it talks about equipment and other things, the two main issues where through the last 2 years we've realised there is a significant waiting time are our neurodevelopmental pathway and our speech and language therapies. And that waiting time has been compounded by a significant increase in demand. So both our education healthcare plans and our especially neurodevelopmental pathways have seen significant demand. I think 43% in the increase in demands of neurodevelopmental pathway, of which we're seeing a 26% increase in children and people being diagnosed with autism. So quite significant increases. So as we go through, colleagues, as Colin said, will take you through the detail. But that deep dive and that focus we bring through every board. We have an arrangement that mirrors our safeguarding arrangements with that joint leadership from Colin and I, and we seek some real detailed assurances from officers, not only in what they're doing to bring down the waiting times, but also to support families and children and people while they're waiting. Because, and you'll read in the paper, actually through that we've come up with some real challenges around how we can reduce waiting times by getting the information right, meeting parents early on just to make sure that everything that's on the referral is correct, so that you don't get a year in and then say, oh, whoops, by the way, you shouldn't really be in this queue, you should be in a different queue. So we've got some really good processes that we've put in place to try and support the waiting list being the right size. I think what's really important is that for us, not only do we have that internal diligence, but as Colin said, when we go bi-monthly to meet with Dame Christine, she gives us that additional independent challenge. And then Adrian Smith, as the Chief Exec of the Council, but also Amanda Sullivan, the Chief Executive of the ICB Board, seek independent assurance from Dame Christine about the progress the board is making. So in terms of that robustness of the challenge of, are we really doing everything we can? We have lots of conversations, and Colin might do a secret eye roll at me now, as might Martin, but because this is a new select committee and we've been on this journey for quite a long time, I was reminded this morning that we forget sometimes how far we've come, and whether the presentation we shared with inspectors this morning might be helpful for committee members to receive, just to see us describing our journey in the last couple of years to inspectors.
I think as well, when I came in 2 years ago after the inspection as independent chair at Colin's request, I was very happy to come. I have a national background over a long time, so it was coming into Nottinghamshire to look at two things really. One, how far can Nottinghamshire deliver? What's gone wrong? You don't get a systemic failure judgment if everything's working, something had gone wrong. So it was about uncovering what's gone wrong, working out how to put that back together. And then from my national experience, it was about how much can Nottinghamshire actually do within the national context that is difficult. So I suppose what's been really interesting for me is the thing that has changed fundamentally in 2 years is the nature of the partnership between health and local authority and parent carers. It is a very, very different relationship from what it was. It's a much mature relationship. It's a much stronger relationship. It's a much clearer relationship. That does not mean, and never ever in the world of SEND will we make all of the people happy all of the time. It just isn't possible. But it's a much more evidenced approach with a much stronger database and a relationship that's gone from being angry to being mature. What is it between our two sets of resources we can put together and deliver? I think the other thing, two things. One is how important the role of elected members have been throughout that process. We've had really strong elected member representation on the improvement boards, and I think that's been really important. The improvement boards are set up in a way where I independently chair, members attend and can ask anything they like, and also we have regional representatives from the Department of Health and from the Department of Education who come along to our boards to make sure we're sticking to purpose, we're doing what we need to do, And at each of the boards, I am saying, is this as much as we can deliver in Nottinghamshire? How do we do that? What do we do? So Rosa describes, for example, the challenging nature of increased demand in the system. That is a national issue. It is not a Nottinghamshire issue. It goes across the piece. But what is it, therefore, is possible in Nottinghamshire? And that's why, in terms of investment, in terms of satisfaction, in terms of the green process, it's been really important that elected members are updated, engaged and involved at every step.
Thank you. Okay. Would any other officer like to?
Can I just say a couple of bits if that's okay?
Absolutely.
So I think you've heard it clearly articulated that the work around SEND is a partnership priority. That partnership is health, is the ICB, is all of our education settings, social care settings, but also includes our parent carer community. So we met this morning with inspectors as that partnership to set up to start the on-site inspection activity around the CQC and Ofsted monitoring visits around progress that's been made in this area. And it was that partnership representation speaking as a system. So I think that's really important that we highlight that in this committee. This report, as has been referenced, is an update report. There's been update reports to each select committee for a long period of time. Perhaps that is less effective because it means that the data is slightly out of date. So what you've got goes to March. Actually, the information that we hold would be current. So there might be a different way of approaching that in the future, potentially. Definitely think it's helpful if we share that presentation out with members of this committee afterwards. And we'll do that through Martin, because that will give you a really accurate and up-to-date picture of the activity that's taken place over the last 2 years to improve SEND provision, identification, assessment, and service delivery, to have an impact on the outcomes of children and young people and their families. That's an ongoing piece of continuous improvement activity driven by the inspection 2 years ago. But actually, I think we know that the SEND system and the challenges will continue to exist. And that larger context that Cullen's alluded to is really important. As a partnership, we're relentlessly pursuing improvement in that. And we want that improvement to be seen in the impact on our children and young people. And that speaks to our, see Colin's got an outcomes card, and members that have met me before will know that I'll give you one of these cards whenever I see you. Our vision for young people with SEND in Nottinghamshire and the outcomes which we agreed with parents and carers, with children and young people, with stakeholders were critical for all of our young people, but especially those with SEND who might be more disadvantaged. In terms of the report itself, we'll give you an update on the progress against both of those priority areas and some of those areas for improvement, but just some headlines for you to be aware of in the local area. We've currently got about 5,688 children and young people with an education health and care plan in Nottinghamshire. Proportionately, that's lower than average. It's about half of the national average, but we have a significant investment and interest in supporting young people outside of that statutory process through a strong graduated approach across the local area. We've seen that proportion of young people with an education health and care plan grow by about 50% in the last 2 years. So we are seeing a significant increase. 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, our statutory timescales for assessment of education health and care plans was at 4.5%. That's now at 47% within the timescale. Nationally, the best it's ever been was 60% in 2016, not long after the SEND reform came about, the previous SEND reform. So and current national is just under 46%. So we're now at a point where in Nottinghamshire that improvement activity is reaping the benefit of seeing increased timescales that take us up to and above that which are seen nationally. And there's a whole focus on improvement activity around working in localities, working relationally with children and families, trying to improve that, working with education settings from early years through to further education settings and health colleagues and family hubs in local areas in order to make a difference that will be felt by families and by children and young people where they live, that can be more responsive, more agile. And that's described in here. That currently takes us through a redesign of our statutory SEND services in order to work in a different way. So the improvement activity is extensive around SEND services in Nottinghamshire. We've talked about the CQC and Ofsted monitoring visit. That will give you a level of scrutiny into this area, which will far exceed that of this committee or anything else at this time. We've had ongoing monitoring by the Department for Education and NHS England over the last 2.5 years through a series of 6-monthly stock takes, looking at strategic work, deep dives into the areas for priority action and areas for improvement, 6-weekly scrutiny from the SEND independent board that Dame Christine chairs around partnership improvement, and 6-weekly partnership assurance and improvement group focus, which is stakeholders from across the partnership, parents and carers, health service providers, education leaders, social care colleagues, everybody round the table together, holding to account the partnership and driving forward improvement. That's part of our ongoing governance arrangements that have been established since the inspection. And that's a really powerful group of body of people that are listening to the voice of children and young people in every meeting, assessing the impact on outcomes, and driving forward continuous improvement. So there's a whole range of layers of governance and oversight of the SEND improvements. I think as a partnership, we're really proud of the progress that's being made, but recognise that both within Nottinghamshire, there's a lot more to do. We will continue to, and we know what that is, and it's clearly articulated in our self-evaluation and in the documents that we will share with you. But it's within a context of a really challenged SEND system. So is it going to feel great for the experience great for every child and family? No, it's not. But we are striving to make that as good as possible within Nottinghamshire.
Thank you, Peter. Well, any other officers like to have anything to the floor then? Okay, so can I move the recommendations and seek a seconder, please?
Can we ask questions?
Very shortly.
Sorry, I've been out of it for 2 months. It's obviously not up to date.
So may I seek a seconder, Christopher?
Yes, please. I second that.
Lovely, thank you very much. Right, I'm going to now open the floor for debate. I have one question. The outcome of this week's inspection, when can we anticipate the findings of?
So the inspection that we're receiving this week is a monitoring inspection, and that will simply tell us whether we're making efficient or sufficient progress or not. So effective action, will be the phrase. So it won't be a grading inspection. We'll expect that letter within
Within 30 days.
30 days. Within 30 days, yeah.
But it's important to remember that Nottinghamshire is the first county that was inspected under this inspection framework. So the inspection that's happening here now is a bit of a testing one. So this is the first time this set of inspectors have inspected under this particular framework, under this particular process. So while we would normally expect a response within 30 days, that might be delayed. That's not to do with what's happening here. That's to do with the inspectorates themselves, making sure that their own quality control levers are in place and appropriate.
Lovely. But Chair, if I can second guess perhaps where your mind's going, by the time this committee meets again, we should have that report published, and it could be agendaed, as a discussion point.
Obviously, that could change the path of where we go moving forward. But we do anticipate it being a positive outcome, and with the structure and the work that's been put in, that seems to be likely. Yeah. Okay. Lovely. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Councillor Saddington.
Thank you, Chairman.
Saddington, sorry.
Thank you for the last report to you two ladies, Rosa. I worked with you before, so I do know you. I have to say, Chairman, I'm very disappointed that the Cabinet Member for Education and SEND is not here today. She clearly didn't think it's sufficiently important to be here. We're here discussing very important matters this morning, education and SEND. She is the Cabinet Member and I have a question to ask her, but I'll ask you instead, Chairman, and hopefully I will have a reply. But I think when we've got people from the ICB, we've got the director here, officers, I think she should be here to answer questions. But hey ho, she obviously doesn't consider it important. So, Chairman, bearing in mind what the last administration provided for the SEND children in Nottinghamshire, that is SEND schools and SEND transport. Prior to the election, the Reform group were saying that they were going to cut the send transport. This is extremely important to those parents who have children with special needs. And I would like you to confirm that the current administration will continue to provide the same level of service for transport as these children are now receiving, and also the same level of schooling. It is very, very important that we don't have a drop, which brings me to the point that there is a school in Mansfield due to provide send provision. Could you tell me how far the progress of that school is and when you expect it to open, Chairman, please?
Okay. Yeah, okay. Thank you for your comments. They will be noted. My remit, obviously, as chair, I can only comment on information that I have to hand, but I would like to pass that one over to Peter.
But Chairman, we come to this meeting for answers from the cabinet member who doesn't avail herself.
I take on board what you're saying.
And she should be here. She should consider, if we can have outside people from the ICB, then she should be here to answer the questions.
I take on board what you're saying.
Chair, if I may, in terms of responding on behalf of the partnership, the special educational needs provision of send school places, although it doesn't fall within the scope of this report, is hugely important. So Ravensdale Horizons Academy is due to open in January 2026.
Right.
The handover of that build is anticipated towards the end of November to allow a period of induction, support and transition prior to the opening by the Diverse Academies Trust in January 26. That'll be 160 places when it's at full capacity within Mansfield for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities. It's a significant step forward in our ambition to ensure that all of our children have the best provision as close to their home as they can have.
Thank you.
Would it be possible to ask when the school is open that we actually go en masse and have a visit of the premise? And
so I believe there is a visit already set up for members, which is in July or August, I believe. But we can get in touch.
Lovely. Okay, thank you.
Chair, I may thank you, first of all, for members' interest in visiting. So in July and August, of course, what you'll see is a beautiful building. It's no children. Yeah. I would encourage members, if they have an interest, to also visit places like St Giles School in Retford, yeah, or Fountaindale School, yeah, or Foxwood School. Yeah. But as officers, we can organise those visits. Dame Christine has been really clear with the Improvement Board. We're not meeting County Hall. Don't see any children in County Hall. Yeah. So for our last 4 or 5 improvement boards, we've met in schools. Yeah, and schools have been brilliant, both at hosting those, and we took over the gymnasium of a school just 2 weeks ago. Yeah, but it gives the opportunity of doing schools like nothing better than showing visitors round about what a difference they make. And I have to say, visiting somewhere like St Giles, yeah, kind of spoiler alert, St Giles have just been inspected. Yeah, that inspection report will be published in the next, hopefully by the end of term. It will be a heartwarming read. Yeah, when you read that inspection, not surprisingly, yeah, from what we've seen in the leadership that Matt Rooney offers that school. Yeah, but I will ensure that every member of this committee has a copy of that report at the point it's published. Yeah, and I would encourage any member of this committee that wishes to visit a school to see the difference that we make to children that they visit that school.
But can I go back to Councillor Saddington, please? I will be seeking a written explanation from Councillor Hannah John, and that will be forwarded to all committee members if that's okay. I want to ask the questions that you've asked me, and we will get a response from if that's okay with you.
Thank you, Chairman.
But I promise that will be a request.
That point up. Thank you. I don't think she even sent her apologies.
Okay, thank you.
Not acceptable.
Councillor Girling.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, the school in Mansfield, I'm quite proud of because that came through my cabinet position. That is due to open in January 2026. I just want members to realise why it's taking so long, and it's not because of it being built, it's because the academy that's taking it over didn't want to open it until then. So I think that's an important thing to understand. So if ready, it would have been ready probably for September this year, for the start of the school period type of thing. So that is what they requested, and it's the second school that we've built as well in our term, because we built the Orchard School in Newark as well, so which is a really good example of a SEND school. That might be worth a visit for members to have a look at that. That's been running quite a while now, and it's something we're very proud of. And I just think also it might be worth putting into context. When we had the inspection, and this is my understanding, so please tell me if I'm wrong, because this is my perception of it. When we was inspected, the last inspection that put us into this, where they said we had a problem with SEND, yeah, the inspection before that, was it adequate or good? And the person that was involved in helping us, making sure that we continued that way, was surprised that we got the award that we got, because it was a brand new inspection regime. So it was the first one in the country to be inspected under that regime. So it's all very brand new. And so it was quite a shock to us then to go from a high standard to this, where we was in this position we are in now. And I'd like to pay tribute to not only the officers that's worked really hard, and I think you'll see when they did the inspection today to Wednesday, isn't it? There's been a massive uptrend in terms of where they said we were where we are now. But that's great to the work all the officers done, but also Councillor Taylor, who was a cabinet member, did a lot of driving of that as well. And I think, you know, that shouldn't be lost. It's easy to say, oh, it was a bad result, and it was. But the context behind that, actually, we was doing well. We thought we was doing exactly the right thing, because at the last inspection, that's what they said, didn't they? They said we were doing the right thing, you know, and then all of a sudden they changed the criteria, and then all of a sudden we're not doing the right thing. So, you know, that's just put in context so the members of this committee understand what's behind it all, because there's always a story, isn't there? And that's our story, honest, Your Honour. Is that about right? Is that an accurate assessment?
Thank you, Councillor Gilling. Colin?
Chair, if I may, yes, the new framework was announced on the 11th and 12th of January 2023 with much fanfare by Ofsted and CQC, and we had the telephone call on the 16th of January, so 4 days later, to say that we were the first. It was, I understand, Department for Education's expectation that the Nottinghamshire system would come out with the best grade, not the poorest grade. And that therefore was a shock to the system, with regards to what that might be. Having said that, and it was personally and professionally really painful, really difficult time. It was the best thing that could have happened for children and families in Nottinghamshire with special educational needs and disability, because it has become an absolute priority of the local authority, an absolute priority of the ICB, and an absolute priority of the system. So as painful as it was, it's not a methodology of making improvement I would recommend. Well, painful though it was the best thing to our residents. And actually that is far more important than my professional discomfort.
And in fact, we said to the inspectors this morning, we didn't feel like this a year ago, but now, thank you, because we wouldn't be where we are today as a partnership had we not had that very uncomfortable period to move forward from. So I'm really confident that the children, the young people and their families in Nottinghamshire are getting a better deal from us collectively today than they were 2 years ago, and that has to be positive, doesn't it?
Thank you. Councillor Cullen.
Thank you. Thank you. So, I mean, I planted my flag earlier to tell you that I work in this field and I've done for 40 years with disadvantaged children. So I can say that a few years ago it was terrible, and I want to really congratulate everybody on the work that's been done that's actually brought it to the level we're at today, and the difference is tangible. So that's important. But at the moment, there's a great deal of concern out there about the government's plans to change the SEND process, and the leaked documents last week that said about abolishing the education, health and the EHCP. People are contacting us and me and us about it, and there's a great deal of concern. What do you think? How's that going to affect all the great stuff we're talking about here, the improvements? Because it's tipping it up.
I'll take it from my national role.
Yeah,
It'll probably be helpful.
That's okay.
So, I work as a very part-time strategic advisor to the current government on SEND reforms. I've also worked advising government on SEND to the last 33 children's ministers. So there's a sort of place of history that we've gone through this. When the Children and Families Act delivered in 2014, that was the creation of education, health and care plans. We couldn't have foreseen that 10 years later, we will be getting to a point where in most schools now, nearly 40% of children are being diagnosed as having some sort of SEN. Now, there's all sorts of evidence around that. It's not overdiagnosis, whatever the noise is. It's about the recognition of need that was hidden before. And it's also about a society that's been impacted on things like COVID, the role of social media, a whole range of things, which means we have a more challenged group of children and young people than we've had before. The current system is failing on 2 counts. The first count is financially, it is unsustainable. It is unsustainable for every single county and every single local authority to a point where your SEND budgets will become such a big part of what you're trying to achieve. You will be losing out for the majority of children. You balance between SEND budget, youth services, a whole range of things. So somehow or other financially the system has got to be under control. The second thing, which is very, very separate but equally as important, is quite frankly the current system isn't delivering the outcomes for children we want it to. Children with SEND are still not achieving what they need to do. Going back to your 16 to 19-year-olds, children who have SEND are 8 times more likely not to be in education, training and support, as I'm sure you know from your experience. So the last government looked at this and in a sense struggled with looking at what is the level of reform you need to undertake in a system. So since the current government's been in, they've wanted to look at wholesale reform. So we've had to look over the last 12 months at every aspect of reform. Why aren't we delivering the best service for children? What's happening in schools? What's happening in good schools? You have some really, really good schools in Nottinghamshire, both special schools like St Giles that my Cullen was talking about, but places like Oldham and White. You go into Oldham and White School, it's brilliant. It's a brilliant mainstream inclusive school. Kids there are confident, whatever. When I talk to those head teachers and say, do you need education, health and care plans to deliver what you're delivering for these children? They say no. We rewrite them when they come in anyway. We look at what we're trying to do and whatever. So what we've been trying to work out is to look at every single aspect of the system, including education, health and care plans, and say, how do we deliver a better system for children? Those negotiations are still ongoing. We've been trying to work out, because the big thing about education, health and care plans is primarily they've become totemic. So parents are saying, don't take this away, these are my child's rights. You take this away, I have nothing. That's not actually true, but it's where the fault lines in the system have developed because parents don't feel they're supported appropriately in other ways. Though if you look at what Nottinghamshire's doing on graduated response, you'll see we have so many children here are being supported without need. Government is committed now to bringing out a schools white paper in the autumn. The latest guess is probably October. It will be a schools and SEND reform paper, looking at what we do, and the decisions on that are not yet set in stone. They are still going through processes. Keir Starmer's now got involved. There's all sorts of things going on. In terms of how that impacts on Nottinghamshire, what we have coming up in Nottinghamshire, as we have in many counties, is 3 moving parts. We have the whole stuff about what will happen to SEND reform, what will that mean here? We have the whole stuff about local government reform and what will be the shape of Nottinghamshire in the future. And you have the whole stuff about the reorganisation of ICBs. So what we have tried to do as an improvement board over the last 2 years is actually start to future-proof against this. So what does that start to look like? How do we work together and what do we do? So the current answer on the HC plans is we don't know yet. And the honest answer is any reform on SEND is complex and challenging and difficult. And the likelihood of the implementation of that reform, the point it becomes law, the earliest of that is September 2028. So at the moment, we're trying to hold the system together with moving parts moving around our head. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that is helpful. I've got 2 parts to my question. You said you didn't want.
Okay, thank you, then, Christine. Yeah. Super. Yeah. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Councillor Cullen.
Well, first of all, let me say I'm really proud that you mentioned Alderman White.
Good.
Because my sister-in-law is the head teacher.
She is fabulous.
She is. She's my brother's wife. And Alderman White is an example of a school that was once not a very good school, but completely transformed by good school leadership.
Absolutely.
My sister-in-law, I'm very proud. Secondly, the perception and the story out on the ground is that although the EHCP plans are getting done more rapidly and in time, way too many are going to tribunal. Is that the reality, or is that just the perception?
Chair, if I may, Peter will bring up the latest data, on our tribunal stuff. And one of the things that Ofsted and CQC quite rightly said 2.5 years ago is you don't even know the data. You don't know what your waiting lists are. You don't know how many tribunals you're going to. You don't know how many you're winning, how many you're losing. We have transformed that situation in the last 2.5 years. So we know how many tribunals we're going to. We also knew that we inevitably lost those tribunals. So we avoid going to tribunal. We resolve things before we get to that point in many of the cases. And I think the number of tribunals is, I'm just wanting Pete to check whether it was 0 in the last few months or whether it was 1 or 2, but it was a very small number in Nottinghamshire, having been scores 7 years ago.
Remember, nationally, 97% tribunal cases are not lost, but are conceded or not fully met by local authorities. It's the way that the system is weighted at the moment. It's quite challenging.
But Chair, if I also may add, the 2 4-letter acronyms get swapped around as if they're the same thing. SEND and EHCPs are not the same thing. There are 16,000 children in Nottinghamshire with a special educational needs and disability, and 11,500 of those children are having their needs met without the need for a plan. So instead of spending 20, 25, 30 weeks weighing something, we are getting on with trying to meet children's and young people's needs. The reason that Dame Christine Lenahan was able to mention Alderman White is because it's one of the schools that Improvement Board visited and was hosted in. And the children that showed us round that school were the children with additional needs and special educational needs and disabilities. Where in many schools in past years, those would be the last children that a VIP guest like a Dame would be invited to show around the school. Those kids were confident, they had their head held high, they were articulate, it was heartwarming. And I thank you to your sister-in-law. She was a hugely impressive head teacher, and every single member of staff that we met was the same.
But when you come back up with the numbers, I think there is something there about with SEND, there are many people who have a story of the past, and we can't change people's experiences that they've had, but we can change moving forward. So, but moving people from that place forward can be really challenging. So you may well hear that narrative.
That's why I said perception.
But when you look at it, often those are people who have been through the system historically rather than currently.
So if I may just add in, somebody in our partnership described our partnership as having matured to be an agile partnership, i.e. able to respond to change and pivot. So whatever comes in October and beyond, as a partnership, we will respond to that in a way that puts children and families at the centre of what we do, and we'll adhere to those outcomes for our children and young people. That focus on a graduated response on inclusive mainstream settings, and as a partnership supporting that, is really important to us. we invest as much as we can of our high needs block in a financially unsustainable system directly into education settings. It's not tied to an education, health and care plan. 25% of our high needs block is delivered within settings directly. Those settings, if I picked out some comments from Ofsted inspections, Ofsted are in those settings looking at the quality of education. The school has high expectations of pupils with special educational needs and disabilities. Leaders identify specific needs accurately. Staff adapt teaching to enable pupils to learn well. Leaders seek external support when needed. Pupils with SEND learn the same curriculum as their peers. Staff supporting pupils with SEND adapt teaching to meet their needs. There's some examples in this other report. Pupils with special educational needs and disabilities receive effective support and access to full curriculum. Provision for pupils with SEND is very strong. If any schools are listening to this, it'd be interesting to see if they could pick themselves out. The school has clear systems in place to identify pupils with special educational needs. Staff provide expert support for pupils with SEND. As a result, they thrive and achieve well across the curriculum. Just some examples from Ofsted reports. And every time an Ofsted report, before it's published, and we see that as a local authority, I read every single one to see what Ofsted are saying about the SEND provision, knowing that as a system, we're supporting that SEND provision through finance, through training, through access to surgeries. So I think it's really important that regardless of what happens in terms of reform of the SEND system, as a system, we need to be focused on identifying and meeting need where children and young people are, which is in education settings. Coming back to the bit about tribunals, we haven't had a tribunal this year. It's disappointing that we have a system, national SEND system, that ends up with tribunals being a point of, it's that kind of battle around the system. We shouldn't be in a place to battle. That's why change is required, whatever that change is, in order to remove that need to have those SEND tribunals.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Colin. Did you want to?
If I may, Chair, and this is about our humility, because I think that if some parents and carers with children with special educational needs were listening in, they might think that we're punching the air and saying how good we're doing. We're doing a lot better than we were doing 2.5 years ago. We've still got a long way to go. Yeah. So if you're one of those parents that are in the 52% whose education, health and care plan wasn't done in time, it's no comfort at all that 2.5 years ago, you would have been in 95% cohort. We've got lots of work to do. There needs to be some reform to help us do that. But we continue to engage our parents and our carers to listen to their experiences. I just wish that we were a bit more able to engage our children and young people also to engage their experiences, because I suspect, as Councillor Cullen is aware, sometimes our children and young people's ambition for what they want to achieve as young adults doesn't always fit with maybe what their parent and carer might want to in terms of anxiety and concern for that. But we could bring you case study after case study of internships, remarkable life-changing experiences of our children and young people, but we're not yet doing it for enough. So we need to go further and we need to go faster, which is what Dame Christine has been challenging us.
Thank you, Colin. Very patiently, Nigel sitting there eyeballing me.
No, thank you. And brilliantly, Colin has moved into the point I was going to make a minute ago. I'll make it anyway. I spend more time listening to head teachers of mainstream schools than of SEND schools. And my recommendation to this committee is that in order to have a fully rounded understanding of how special needs provision is developing across the county, that you would look at special schools and SEND provision in mainstream schools as well. What you'll hear is a real passion, and the comments that Colin has just read out are absolutely in alignment with what I see in our schools, that schools, staff, head teachers are so passionate about making sure that every child's needs are met. They will also tell you stories about how they're going bust, about how the deficits that they're having to juggle with are extreme, and about the difficulties they have in, on the one hand, meeting the needs of the special needs child, and on the other, those of the rest of the class, and trying to hold those two needs in balance. So my recommendation to the committee is that you look at it fully in the round and how those needs are being met in mainstream schools as well.
Thank you, Nigel. can I welcome Anna John into, albeit a little bit late. I think we've got a question for you, Hannah, from Councillor Saddington. She asked me a question earlier, and I was going to defer the question for a letter, but please.
Thank you, Chairman. You've been rescued. Thank you, Councillor Hannah John, for actually coming to the meeting on it's nearly at the end. I would like to ask, bearing in mind what the last administration, which I was a part, provided for the SEND children in Nottinghamshire. That is, I'm talking about schools and transport. Prior to the election, it was mentioned by Reform that you were going to look at cutting the transport for SEND children. These are the most vulnerable children in our society. And I am asking you today to give me an answer, please, as to whether you, who is in the current administration, will continue to provide both schools for SEND children and the transport for the SEND children. And we are moving into September, when the schools are returning after the summer recess. I think it's very important that these people who got a message way back in March, April time, do actually know whether they can expect transport their vulnerable children in September. So if you could give me that answer, please.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I just want to offer my apologies for the timing of my attendance here. I was caught up in another cabinet meeting, so apologies for that. That is, yeah, you make a very good point in terms of the provision, and I know that we've made good, significant strides in terms of helping to provide parent carers assist them with transport for their children and young people. First of all, I would say that this administration is committed to the ongoing support of for parent carers and in the area of provision for ECHP plans and any resources that those children and young people need, but also for transportation. We are committed to continuing to support them in that area. I think one thing we will be looking at, because as you know, Reform is all about efficiency in our approach. That's a big thing, saving residents money. I think we are going to be looking at innovative ways in how we can help to reduce maybe areas within that transportation, like looking at travel buddies and training for children and young people, so that they can be more independent and integrate into mainstream ways of transportation, making them more ready for life when they leave school. So that, but we are continually going to be committed to supporting those children and young people.
Chairman, can I just come back on that? I assume you've been around some of the care homes and seen some of the children who are in those care homes, and it would be completely impossible for them to get on regular transport. And these are the people I'm actually speaking about.
Right. Okay.
Not necessarily somebody who might go by taxi who could go by bus. That's another issue. But those people still rely on that transport. But I'm talking about those people where in the care homes where I've been, where there's no way could those children go on normal regular transport. So I do ask you, I don't think that question has been properly answered. I'd like a written answer, please.
That's absolutely fine.
Thank you.
Like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillors.
So mine wasn't so much of a question as opposed to more of an ask. So for the benefit of myself as a new member and maybe for more experienced members of the committee, it would be good to understand the referral process for a child, young person to be referred to the schools such as Mansfield or St Giles, and where that where the SEND provision in mainstream school ends and where it would then begin in a dedicated school setting. I'd also like to understand about the catchment areas for for the SEND school, for the dedicated SEND schools that we have. And also, and Colin, you touched on, you mentioned about EHCPs. Not every child that's in SEND has an EHCP. Again, the process for having an EHCP, how that all works. So whether that's in the scope of this meeting, I don't know.
So it's probably outside of the scope of the report that we've got, and it might be something that is worthy of adding into the future scheduling. But just very briefly to give some level of support. So there is an education healthcare plan as part of a graduated response to supporting children and young people with complex needs and SEND, which starts off at the very early stages with adaptations that schools and education settings can make to meet the needs of a child or young person, through into requiring something additional, which a child or young person and the rest of the school wouldn't access through a graduated approach, through into requiring something very specialist, coordinated through an education healthcare plan. It's a legal document which sets out the provision that's required to meet that. So it's a bit of a graduated response to individual needs. And young people will go through that process and back through that process, depending on the support and provision that they receive and the environment that they're in as well. In terms of SEND schools, catchment area for SEND schools in Nottinghamshire is predominantly county-wide, although we would always work to secure the most local place for children and young people, partly because it reduces pressure on transport and partly because it's the right thing to do. Where there is surplus of capacity, which nobody has nationally, that becomes more possible. So when we see new schools growing or expanding, there's an opportunity there to try and get more local provision in place. The naming of that provision would come through the EHCP process. As part of that process, there is a review of what is the right provision to meet this young person's needs. Can that be a mainstream school? We consult with schools. Does that need to be specialist provision? If so, which specialist provision? And then that would be named in a plan. So the plan would designate where the young person will be educated and have their needs met. Sometimes that's specialist provision, sometimes that's mainstream. We're seeing more mainstream schools now with specialist provision within them. There's a whole complex kind of range of possibilities. Happy to go into more depth in the future if that helps.
All right, no, thank you. Okay, so anybody else anything to say? If not, I would like to close the floor from debate and hand over to Martin for a summary of the discussion.
Thank you very much. So just some further actions to do. I think obviously we talked about arranging the visits. We'll look to get visits to arrange for members that are interested to the relevant schools, and obviously there'll be the all-member visits to the new school at Ravenstone. I think members would like to see it in the new year when it's actually got some children in it. Obviously it's in the recommendations that you'll be voting on in a second, but obviously once we have the outcome of what's going on in the next 3 days, we'll have a report in October, and then really based on what the outcome of that was, how you'd like to say scrutiny of that moving forwards. We'll circulate the presentation that's been made to the inspectors today, and I think that forwards, I think, even though I hate the term, I think it gives us the opportunity to have a lot more kind of like deep dives into more very specific parts of the system, rather than kind of like this overview that we've been taking for the last 2.5 years. And then finally, the committee did a review of EHCPs probably over 2 years ago, that goes into a lot of detail about the process and what happened and what the situation was then. Obviously, things have moved forward a lot since then, but I will send that out along with the response that was made by Cabinet at the time.
Super, thank you, Martin. So can I confirm that all the members' points have been captured? I believe that they have. And can we have a show of hands, please? Thank you very much. So a conclusion is near. I would like to just take this opportunity on behalf of, and I've had to change my wording of this slightly. I would like to offer Colin all the very best on behalf of every elected member and also our scrutiny committee. I was going to say happy retirement, but I think the word is semi-retirement. So on behalf of everybody, have a healthy peaceful retirement, semi-retirement. Well, thank you. Meeting is now closed.
Chairman.
Very good, yeah. Got through it, yeah.
Well done, Sarah. Well done.
I will get that. I promise.
Yeah, good job.